Good evening. I would like to call the public hearing of the South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, January 13 to order. Please silence or shut off your cell phones. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You got it. I'd like to ask the Secretary to read our legal notice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To be published in the Journal Enquirer Thursday, January 1st, 2026, and Thursday, January 8th, 2026, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, January 13th, 2026, at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. 1. Application 25-49P, Down East LLC, request for a zone change of 44.94 acres of designed commercial zone and 0.97 acre of rural residential zone to Buckland Gateway South Overlay Zone and a general plan of development for a 210-unit age-restricted residential community to be known as Wheeler Road, Carriage Home Restricted Housing, on property located at 27 Wheeler Road, 281, 285, and 367 Smith Street. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and our planning department and online at https://southwindsor-ct.gov/planning-department/pages/planning-and-zoning-commission-application. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Paul Burstein, Chair, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Our procedure for the public hearing is as follows. For our application this evening, we'll first hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from town staff. We will then hear from members of the public who wish to comment on the application, first in favor, and then not in favor or neutral. After all public comments have been heard, we will hear from commissioners. We do have some letters to read into the record. If you wish to provide testimony, please approach the podium, sign in, and identify yourself. We ask you to speak clearly so that we can appreciate your comments. Our application tonight is application 25-49P, Down East LLC. At this point, I would like to ask the applicant to come to the podium to make his presentation. I'm not sure your mic is on. There you go. Thank you.
All right, you got me now?
Better.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is John Swaggerty. I represent the owner of this parcel, which is Down East LLC. Corporately, I'm part of Washington Prime Group, which owns malls and shopping centers across the country. I'm here this evening to provide a little bit of an overview on the site and sort of the context, the history that we've been in front of the commission with over the past 2 years, recognizing that some members of the commission are new and sort of new to the process that we've undertaken. And after I speak, we'll hear from our traffic, utilities, and our planning technical consultants. So we'll just do a brief a brief rundown of some context on the property, including the history of this with the Planning Commission and the subcommittee in particular. Okay, I think everyone's familiar with the site in question. 22 Wheeler Road is what we call it. It is there located in the red. It's the 57-acre parcel directly behind the plaza at Buckland Hills. It is located entirely within the town of South Windsor. And like I said, it was originally acquired by my company with intent to develop it as a complement to the shopping center that's in front of it. And as such, it carries, the entire parcel carries a zoning of, it's called designated commercial zone, which encourages sort of large-scale commercial developments. Unfortunately, the company had tried to propose some large-scale shopping centers, power centers, but never brought those plans to full completion. I wanted to take a moment and discuss sort of the history of this parcel as it pertains to this commission. The commission suggested, and we formed a subcommittee in the fall of 2024 to study uses that, a long time ago, right? To study uses that would be acceptable for all parties for this parcel. We met several times in that period between August of 24 and spring of 2025. And again, with the goal being to find a use for the property that meets the objectives and the goals of the various representatives on that committee from the town. Those goals were to find a market viable use, one that minimized impact on residential neighbors surrounding the site, and finding a way to increase tax revenue without overly burdening the municipal services of the town of South Windsor, more particularly not generating school children. That committee consisted of members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, representatives from the town of South Windsor, neighbors along Smith Street, and the owner of the parcel and my planning consultant. You know, we had some planning sessions, we had some whiteboarding sessions, we talked about a lot of ideas. We talked about a lot of commercial, industrial, residential, recreational, lots of different potential uses that could fit there. Certain uses that came up at first, sports facilities, solar farms, were not in favor because they didn't generate what we felt was market viable land value. The neighbors indicated they were not in support of a commercial use like the site was zoned for, given impacts, noise, traffic, lighting, things like that. And of course, we heard the concerns from the community about not generating school children. There was still a desire to maintain some amount of that commercial land, so that was heard. And we all kind of landed on this idea of an age-restricted residential community. Carried good land value, didn't generate school children, was a fairly innocuous use as a neighbor to the residents, and of course accommodating that request from the Planning and Zoning Commission to retain a certain portion of the land for commercial. So then in the spring of 2025, with this recommendation, we created the Buckland Gateway South zone, which would allow the construction of a age-restricted community. And that zone now sits on the code, and the code of the town of South Windsor. And what tonight is about applying that overlay, that zone, to this parcel. So I'm going to give some images of how the parcel could be developed, but all with the caveat that these are still conceptual plans and that this is not a site plan application. This just demonstrates what could be there under the zoning. So just in general, in terms of how the site would be divided, it would look something like this, with a residential piece occupying 47-ish acres and a commercial piece 10 acres or so on the southwest corner of the parcel, closest to the hotel and the existing commercial. This is an illustrative plan for how that age-restricted community could work. Again, this is something that we talked about and discussed with the subcommittee. This observes the density, the maximum density that the town had required, 4.5 units per acre. It produces a maximum unit count of 210 units. With the sort of attendant recreational facilities, clubhouse, pool, sport courts, trails and walking spaces, et cetera, for those residents. And then sort of take a look through how this plan meets the objectives of the committee and the advantages that it brings. First of all, tremendous fiscal impact, the fiscal benefit to the town. Since you don't have school children, you end up with taxes generated, real estate taxes, personal property taxes on cars, with minimal municipal costs. These numbers, I understand, have been revised today. Don will speak to them in more detail, but again, significant net positive fiscal impact. Another benefit, when you have this kind of density, you end up with a, sort of an attractive community. Development of this size will allow developers to include amenities that elevate the product, attract a higher-end buyer, and result in a product that the town can be proud of, ultimately generating higher taxes and creating a nicer product for all the community. This includes, sort of the amenities within the community, like clubhouse, pools, tennis courts, but also some of the trails and open space, like what we see in the third advantage. Again, buffering the property, buffering the development from the neighbors allows room for trails, for connections to Evergreen Walk, for connections to Plaza Buckland Hills, and for just the preservation of open space generally. This page just demonstrates some potential architectural character that would most likely be utilized in a community of this type. Again, all illustrative. So this was my sort of general overview. Like I said, we're going to hand it over to our planner and then our utilities and traffic folks for more technical detail.
Thank you.
I think yours is the third of the three tabs on the top there.
That one. Thank you, appreciate that. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what works best for my eyes in seeing these, so. Appreciate it. Okay. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Don Poland. I'm with the firm of Goman York Property Advisors, headquartered in East Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Down East LLC. I have a PowerPoint presentation here with quite a few slides. Most of them I'm going to paraphrase and speak over. I apologize for the first set of slides as being a bit boring and dry, but it is the statutory stuff related to zone changes and so forth, so just bear with me. I'm going to skip the first slide, which is an overview, since essentially my colleague John, or the client John, has covered that information. And then I want to start on the next slide, which I believe is slide 4 in the deck, and just talk about the requirements. So this application is submitted in accordance with section 5.11, which is the BGS zone, and also section 8-3 of your regulations for zone changes and procedures, and section 8-6 for standards and map plans. The application includes a utility assessment report and a traffic impact assessment prepared by Langdon, and they are here to present on that. Also, a series of maps prepared by Arcadis, including key map, zone change map, master plan, architectural character samples, and driveway details. Some of that you've already seen in John's presentation. Zone change map or survey, and Goman York provided a market analysis and municipal fiscal impact study. Additional revisions have been made to the plan since they were first submitted back in November, and copies of those have both been uploaded to the online site and also provided in hard copies to you. There's also been a number of memos that have been issued answering questions that staff have provided so far, and the certificate of mailing to proximate properties was also completed. So the next slide addresses the zone change, map amendments and development plan. When considering a amendment to the regulations or the map, the commission must consider what's called the comprehensive plan of zoning. In accordance with state law, the comprehensive plan of zoning is the zoning regs and its map is a holistic document that provides a plan for the future development of the community. So you have to look for consistency with the comprehensive plan of zoning, and then consider the plan of conservation and development. And I know this can be confusing sometimes. The POCD is essentially your strategic land use plan covering a 10-year time period, and it's a non-binding document. And that's why you consider it. You don't necessarily have to follow it. So we believe that the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan of zoning, and that state law essentially informs us that a proposed change must be reasonable in nature and not drastically change the character of an area or a district of the area. And that, in addition, that changes in zoning must reasonably relate to the police powers of government, that's public health, safety, and welfare. And most importantly, land use law recognizes that land use evolves over time, and commissions have the authority to change their comprehensive plan of zoning. That is, make amendments to the text and also make amendments to the zoning map. Otherwise, if you go back to when your zoning was originally established, then you would be bound in perpetuity if you could never actually change it. So the proposed zone change, the BGS zone, as John mentioned, we developed through working with the steering committee or the subcommittee that was set up by this commission over a 5-month period. And the BGS zone was approved as a text amendment in the zoning regulations. It is now in the zoning regulations as an overlay zone, and we are now in the process of applying to have that regulation placed on the ground on a portion of the parcels out there. So the BGS zone was narrowly crafted to apply to the DC zone. It does not apply to any other area within the town. And the 4 parcels that are the subject of this application are the only 4 parcels in the community. 3 parcels subject of this application are the only 3 parcels in the community zoned as the DC, and then there is 1 residentially zoned parcel, which is the 4th one that's included here. The age-restricted multifamily development in scale, use, and form is consistent with the long-established multifamily residential uses that dominate the area of the DC zone. While to the south, there is the commercial plaza in Manchester, and to the north, there are the single-family homes on Smith Street. To the southwest, to the west, and to the northwest, that area of town is dominated by various types and styles of multifamily developments. And the multifamily use being requested here and allowed in the BGS zone is less intensive than many, if not most, of the uses that are permitted in the DC zone, allowing for commercial-related developments. I think I just lost my page. My apologies. So, what has occurred between Down East's initial concept plan in January 24 and this application is the very reason why the POCD is an advisory document to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So you have to consider your POCD. And if you recall, back in the spring of 2024, getting my years right here, in the spring of 2024, you were in the process of wrapping up and adopting, ultimately, your new POCD. And it was in January 24 that we first approached you. and you were very displeased with our initial concept for this application. As a result of that, we submitted an application for consideration that was rejected by this commission, and the commission adopted a POCD that had specific recommendations related to the DC zone in this area of town, and many of them not favorable towards residential development. And underlying much of that was the concern for school-aged children. So your POCD really doesn't provide a lot of insight as to how we got from there to here. And that was essentially after the rejection of the first application that you, the commission, created a subcommittee made up of members of this board, staff, other town agencies, and a resident representative from Smith Street, along with myself and John for Down East LLC. Over that 5-month period, as John said, we went through a number of scenarios and ultimately came up with an early version of the concept plan that's before you tonight, the development plan, and ultimately came up with the BGS zone, which was later adopted by the commission. The POCD being non-binding, as I started to say, is really about providing flexibility, recognizing that things change in market, in policy, and in other ways. So the POCD is a flexible document. Goman York also, moving on from the dry zoning, I'm sorry, I kind of spoke over those. Moving on from that, Goman York also provided a substantial market analysis. I have a number of slides here that I'm going to speak over, but you guys received that report back in November. I know it's lengthy, but we took a deep dive look at the market overall. We started looking at multifamily on a statewide basis, then a regional basis, and then ultimately what we defined as a local basis, which is South Windsor and a number of the surrounding towns. We analyzed numbers of recent developments, their sales prices, and other factors related to those developments. We also took a deep dive look at demographics and especially at the senior housing market. And I just want to point to these 3 population pyramids. This is the United States, then Connecticut, and ultimately South Windsor. These show the structure of population in 5-year cohorts. And as you'll notice, the United States and Connecticut are pretty much silos. I wouldn't call them pyramids. Pyramids, when these look like pyramids, they're a place that's high growth. And this is characteristic of a post-industrial advanced society. If you look at South Windsor's pyramid, it's a little bit different. And you have that large contraction in the 20 and 30-something-year-olds in that population. And you also have a larger cohort in the 40 to kind of 50 zone. And that 40 to 50 zone actually those cohorts relate to the bulge in younger populations related to your recent increases in school-aged children. So those are the populations that are producing children and so forth. And then up above, you kind of have a silo, which is not as dramatic as the Connecticut one, and that's the point I'm getting at. From a market standpoint and kind of demand, nationwide, there's greater and greater demand for senior housing in all different forms, whether it be independent living, whether it be age-restricted, whether it be skilled nursing or assisted living, memory care, and what have you. It is the fact that our populations has siloed, that the baby boomer population, just the youngest, just crossed the 60 years of age mark, and that we are living longer and we will continue to have this bubble of population at the top. You can actually see that here in the Connecticut one, where that 60-something kind of age cohorts is one of the larger cohorts out of all of them. That, to us, basically in the market research showed that the majority of demand for these units would come from more so from the region, from within your town itself, but you also have some reasonable size in those age cohorts approaching the age of populations that would reside in this kind of housing. So we also did a very detailed fiscal analysis. I want to start off with property tax revenues, which are shown here on this slide. And as part of that market research, by basically analyzing similar products throughout the state, region, and then in the local market, we came up with an estimated value of the development, or what your assessor would call the appraised value. And then we came up with an assessed value, and then utilizing your mill rate, that allows us to calculate the estimated taxes per unit, or the estimated taxes across the entire development. So projected real property taxes were $3.9 million for the 210 units. As was alluded to, some adjustments have been made to these, and I will get to them at the end. We also took a look at personal property taxes, which is specifically motor vehicle property taxes. And we estimated the 210 units would generate approximately $200,000 in personal property tax for motor vehicles. However, we did adjust that figure down by about 25%, assuming that 25% of the vehicles, if they were residents from South Windsor that were now purchasing one of those units, that those vehicles would already be captured and wouldn't be new. So we made a 25% reduction to $150,000 approximately in personal property tax revenue. Due to concerns raised by, and I skipped the WPCA user fees. Your user fees are $499 per unit, which works out to approximately $105,000 across the development in WPCA fees for a year. We did a very detailed, I know you guys have seen these analyses in the past as I've represented this client and others, but we did a much more detailed analysis due to the character of this development, the age-restricted aspects of it. Staff and yourselves as the commission and members of the committee, when we were working on the BGS zone, expressed concerns over, while we're not producing school-aged children, that this development, by producing a lot of near senior citizens or senior citizens, may tax certain, may create additional burdens on certain aspects of your town services. For example, like senior services or emergency services for EMS calls and so forth. So we took a much more detailed dive into your budget. Page 15 here, my apologies, page 15 here is basically the basic calculation where we look at your budget, the revenues, the expenditures, and then we go through and account for the grand list, where revenues are coming from, where the expenditures are going, and what's most applicable to a residential development. So we isolate the commercial and industrial, and we isolate the personal property coming out of commercial development. That's personal property for equipment, not motor vehicles. And that gets us to kind of a residential share of taxes. We then dug in further to get at the specific, further aspects of the budget and of the revenues. And ultimately, we come up with the residential share of about $96 million. And that is then used to start calculating the fiscal impact of the residential development. The next step was then that deep dive into those areas of services that would most likely be impacted by such a development. Public safety being one of them, public works also being another, and then elsewhere in the budget, things like senior services and so forth. As I note here in the second bullet on this slide, further adjustments were made to this in the memo that I issued dated December 22nd, and I'll speak to that in a moment. So this page gives you the breakdown. We basically broke down the budget for public safety, police, public safety, fire, health and human services, and parks and recreation, the four areas we felt would be impacted possibly impacted by the older population within this development. So we isolated those portions of the budget, the percent of total that they were, we prorated them, and then broke them down on a per unit basis based on the number of housing units you have within the town, and then applied that per unit cost to each of the 210 units to come up with an additional kind of fiscal impact of about $197,000 to account for additional services related to the older age cohorts. So in the end, we end up with this table. It appeared in the November report from Goldman York with the column which is shown as the total. And then, as I said, I issued an amended memo on December 22nd because staff had raised a few issues. One of the issues staff raised was related to trash collection services at common interest communities. In most communities, in most towns, the condo developments provide their own trash service. There was a change in that in South Windsor a number of years ago, and that the town actually provides it. I didn't catch that when doing the fiscal impact, and I had actually backed out trash services from the fiscal impact. So I recalculated to account for those services. And in addition, staff raised concerns about what I refer to as backfill enrollments. So as I said, back when doing the motor vehicle taxes, I assumed that maybe 25% of those motor vehicles or households would be coming from within South Windsor, meaning that possibly, 25% of the units would be occupied by persons that lived in South Windsor and had sold their home, meaning that that home could then potentially attract an enrollment. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that assumption in the context of if someone's made the decision to move into an age-restricted community, whether it's in South Windsor or elsewhere, it's likely they'd make that move anyways. Even if they didn't make that move within South Windsor, it's likely as they age that at some point they'd move into some type of elderly care or so forth. And at some point, people pass on and houses turn over. My point being is, the existing housing stock is constantly cycling and turning over, and I don't think any substantial change is created by it. But with that said, I made the calculations. I adjusted for the number of units that would turn over, the potential school enrollments that would go into them, and then ultimately applied a number to it. So the initial fiscal impact was a net positive of almost $3 million. That was adjusted down to just above $3 million, about 200 and, off the top of my head here, $65,000 in additional expenses for the services related to trash collection and for possible enrollments into backfill units within the community. One final question was posed to me yesterday, I believe, that had come from the assessor that said that we didn't address the affordability requirement of 15% of the units. And forgive me, it kind of slipped my mind through this process. So 15% of the units per your regulations need to be affordable. Affordable defined by Connecticut state law is 80% of area median income. In the Hartford region, the median household income is approximately $95,000. 80% of median household income would be approximately $76,000, just to give you context there. So I provided an email response to staff this morning with some recalculated numbers. The current estimated sales value on the units was approximately $762,000 per unit. Some would be higher, some would be lower. And to meet the 80% AMI number, a unit would have to sell for around $343,000. about 45% of the appraised value. So basically 55% of the value is lost, which also means that 55% of the tax revenue on those units would also be lost if they're valued at that lower number. That totals about $10,000 per unit loss in taxes, and collectively over the 32 units of affordable, that would total about $335,000. So that net fiscal positive that I show here of $3,024,972 is estimated to reduce to a net fiscal positive of $2,690,000 approximately. I want to make clear that the fiscal positive nature of this development is 63% of the total revenues we estimated. The real estate property taxes, the personal property taxes, and the WPCA fees. That 63% after all those deductions out of this will still be fiscally positive to the town. The next slide is the one-time development fees. Calculating your building permits, your zoning permits, certificates of occupancy, WPCA connection fees, wetlands applications. The town will receive about $1.8 million in permitting fees if this development is approved and moves forward. So that's in addition to the tax revenues. The last section of our report that we submitted to you was an economic impact analysis, looking at the job creation from it. We look at both job creation during the construction period and then permanent jobs. I explained in detail in the report. Here I will just summarize. The estimated outcome is about 152 jobs created or sustained during the construction period, and then the kind of ripple effect into the community based on spending in the community would result in probably about 134 jobs created elsewhere. In addition, annual consumer spending of the residents of these housing units would, sorry, my eyes aren't doing well with the colors on my page here. Would be approximately $25 million per year in total consumer spending. We prorate that for kind of what's within South Windsor and what's outside of South Windsor, and about 15 million would be outside of South Windsor and about 10 million within South Windsor. In closing, my general feelings here is after a long process and a cooperative process with this commission, with the subcommittee, with staff who has been outstanding and working with us, we've finally gotten to an application that we think is a good application for the town of South Windsor. And we believe it complies with the intent of the regulations. We do recognize that staff has some minor stuff that most of which we've already started working on, some of which we have to finish working on. But I think there is a very good master plan here for the future of this area, and hopefully you guys will agree with us. At this point, I will turn it over to Langdon and their presentation on, I believe, utilities and traffic.
Thank you, Don. Just pull up our presentation slides here. All right, good evening. For the record, my name is David Gagnon. I'm a professional civil engineer with Langdon Engineering, here representing the applicant. And I'm also here to discuss our utility and stormwater approach for the project. Langdon prepared a due diligence utility assessment and conceptual utility plan to support this application. On the screen in front of you, you could see our conceptual utility plan summarizing our utility assessment. Our intent for the project is to use public utilities for sewer, water, electric, and gas. As part of our due diligence in our assessment, we had conversations with the various utility providers to confirm they could service the project. We reached out to the South Windsor WPCA for sewer, Connecticut Water for water and fire protection, and Eversource for both electric and gas service. All the various providers confirmed they could service the project, and I could summarize our conversations with the various providers for you. I'll start with sewer with the WPCA. To service the site, there is a 12-inch sewer main on Wheeler Road just west of our site. Might be difficult to see, but that's highlighted in green. That sewer main is fairly deep, between 8 and 12 feet under the surface of the road, so we believe we could access this sewer main via gravity. And the WPCA confirmed that they currently have the capacity to service our site. As far as water goes, the water main is located on Smith Street. There is not a water main on Wheeler. It is a 12-inch water main that could service both domestic and fire needs. The water company did confirm that there is the capacity on Smith to service the site. And as far as electric goes, again, that's Eversource. There is overhead electric on both Wheeler and Smith Street to the south, shown in red. The service on Wheeler Road is three-phase. Smith Street is only single-phase, so ideally we would want to connect to Wheeler Road. Eversource did note that they recommend connecting to Wheeler Road at 2 locations to provide some redundancy for the site. The last gas service is, or the last utility service is natural gas, again provided by Eversource. In the area, there are 2 different gas mains. There's one in Wheeler Road, that's a 6-inch gas main. There's also one further away on Buckland. And the conclusion, speaking with Eversource regarding gas, is they feel that the 6-inch on Wheeler Road is sufficient capacity to service our site. So in conclusion, we found that the proposed development can be supported by the existing utility infrastructure. And the map in front of you shows all the existing utility infrastructure we identified and proposed routing throughout the site. And from a stormwater perspective, the general approach would be to meet the new Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual requirements in addition to the South Windsor design requirements. Our overarching goal would be to maintain the existing hydrology of the site, so we would analyze up to the 100-year storm and make sure we are not increasing flows while also promoting water quality. Our approach would be kind of a typical series of sump catch basins throughout the site to collect the water, direct those to water quality units to promote water quality, and the last step would be a series of infiltration basins you could see in blue here, and the idea here is to infiltrate those storms. And I would note there would be a fair amount of green space on our site, so this is a good opportunity for groundwater recharge and other kind of low-impact design options. So that's the summary of our utility and stormwater approach. And from that, I'll pass it on to speak to traffic to Chris McLean.
Good evening, Board. My name is Chris McLean from Langen Engineering, professional engineer.
Can you repeat your name?
Sure, Chris McLean.
Chris.
Yep, from Langen. And here to talk to you a little bit about the traffic report. So, as others have mentioned, we're looking at a conceptual site plan here, but in doing so, we were looking at kind of what the maximum amount of traffic would be generated from this site based on this conceptual site plan. So, in talking with some of the surrounding neighbors, we wanted to make sure that that the locations on the site for access to and from the roads were kind of matching with the neighbors' expectations. So on this concept plan, we're showing one driveway off of Pleasant Valley Street and one on Wheeler Road. just two different ways to get in and out of the site, which allows for emergency services from any direction, things of that nature. And then within the site, as I mentioned, we're looking at a maximum of 210 units as a senior adult housing. So what we do is, in order to estimate the amount of traffic that a site like this would generate, we refer to the ITE trip generation manual, which is kind of the industry standard in terms of estimating future traffic for sites. And so in doing so, we use the 210 units, and we're looking specifically at the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour, which are kind of the two key time periods that would be subject to the greatest amount of impact should this site go forward. So in doing so, we're looking at, for 210 units, about 68 new vehicles in the morning peak hour and 79 new trips in the afternoon peak hour. And so those trips would then be distributed throughout the surrounding roads focused on our site. So here we show a study area map that shows the 7 intersections that we studied as part of this, this study. We really focused on the Pleasant Valley corridor from Clark Street to Buckland Street. There's a few different signals, traffic lights on that street, as well as the stop sign controlled intersection with Wheeler Road and then Clark Street. And then the 7th intersection was, we looked at Wheeler Road and Smith Street to the north, really to just kind of bookend any which way any future traffic would be arriving to the site or leaving the site. Using some of the existing traffic counts that we collected back in March of this year, we distributed these new trips throughout the roadway network. And we used a software called Synchro in order to estimate levels of service for the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour, the study periods for our site. And so in traffic engineering, we're looking at a unit of measure called level of service. And level of service is graded A through F, kind of like grade school, A being the best, F being the worst. And what we're really doing is we're looking pre and post development at these level of service grades to see what the true impact of the site would be pre and post development. And so after we distributed this traffic, looked at existing no build analysis and then build analysis, the results show that there's no change, no forecasted change in level of service at any of the 7 intersections that we had studied, which where the most amount of traffic related to the site would be focused. And so as you kind of spread out from these 7 intersections, the traffic impact would be less and less. So at these 7 intersections, including Buckland Street and Pleasant Valley Road, where there's a good degree of traffic, we show no change in any of the levels of service related to this site. I will say we did get a comment from staff about some of our the distribution of traffic that we had modeled. We had shown about 15% of our traffic leaving the site on Wheeler Road and heading north on Clark Street to kind of avoid the Buckland Street. Staff felt that was a little low, that actually more residents would likely avoid Buckland Street. And so we upped that to 25% to kind of shift some traffic away from Buckland Street into a route that felt was a little bit more realistic. And the results here ultimately stay the same. There's no change in level of service pre and post development with regard to the site that we're looking at. So with the maximum amount of units that this site could hold based on the zoning that's allowed, there'd be no change in level of service as shown from our traffic study. So With that, I think that concludes the applicant's portion of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions or however the chair decides to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, is your group all done? We'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. So this is a request for a zone change of design commercial zone and rural residential zone to Buckland Gate South Overlay Zone in a general plan of development for a 210 age-restricted residential community to be known as Wheeler Road Carriage House Restricted Housing. As the commission may recall, and as the history was brought forward to us tonight, this zone was created after a subcommittee was put together, worked for 6 months on discussing uses, and it was adopted last June, I believe, of 2025. It is an overlay zone, so the underlying uses would remain until the overlay zone is applied to it and those uses move forward. The statement within the regulation states that the age-restricted residential use shall be designed in a manner that is sensitive to the surrounding land uses, especially the single-family residential uses on Smith Street. The Buckland Gateway Overlay Zone shall foster high-quality development with careful attention to appearance, placement, and massing of buildings, integration of public amenities where possible, and professional landscaping. That comes right out of the text of the regulation. To support this application, the applicant provided all sorts of maps, traffic studies, utility studies, all which have been reviewed again tonight and have been reviewed by town staff. So this is a two-part application. Part one is the zone change of the overlay zone to establish the zone, and part two is the general plan. I think Mr. Pullen did a good job of talking about when you're reviewing a zone change, the kinds of things in statute that we're looking at. You know, you're looking at how it relates to your POCD, you're looking at the rate of change within your community, you're looking at the general character of the neighborhood, the ability for traffic impacts and the utilities to support the change. In this particular zone, the primary use allowed is age-restricted housing for 55 years and older in the form of a common interest ownership community. So it's not a rental community, it's an ownership community, along with amenities that support such uses. 15% of the units are required to be deed restricted per the regulation. The site is currently surrounded by rural residential single-family zoning to the north. There are a couple senior residence developments to the north. You have multifamily zoning to the west, restricted commercial zoning along Buckland Road, and then commercial zoning classification in Manchester to the south. The zone change is the time to discuss traffic impacts, utilities, potential impacts on municipal services. I'm going to defer some of those comments to Tori Sidoti, our town engineer, specifically related to the utilities. So the second part of the application is for the general plan. This plan provides the commission input at an early stage in the planning of the project before extensive engineering is completed. For these reasons, the amount of detail required at this stage is minimal. However, the commission must be satisfied that you have enough information to make an informed decision about the project. So in this particular depiction, you're seeing existing trees and hedgerows being incorporated into the site design to the maximum extent possible along Smith Street. They provide us some illustrative examples of landscaping and architecture. Again, if this goes forward to the site plan stage, those things will all have to be solidified. The proposal shows carriage homes ranging in 2 to 6 units per building. They're showing us a density of 4 units per buildable acreage. The zoning data table provides zoning setbacks, the unit types, the open space requirements, all those for the Buckland Gateway Overlay Zone. I have provided for the commission a copy of the overlay zone in front of you, as well as a copy of our buildable acreage density, how we determine the net buildable acreage. These are things I've discussed with the applicant. I can't determine from what was submitted what the net buildable acreage is, which is going to determine your unit count. So I think they need to do a little bit more work on that. And then within the body of the regulations, there's some things here that just looking at the general plan would need to be addressed. Some of them specifically relate to buffer requirements and setback requirements. You have to have a 25-foot buffer wherever you're along a zone line in addition to your setback. So some of those things have not yet been shown adequately on the general plan. So again, I bring this to your attention as well as the applicants to make sure that any site planning is making sure that we're addressing these kinds of things. So pedestrian access has been provided throughout the site. We want to ensure that there is a strong pedestrian connection between the housing, the recreation facility, and the retail centers that are off-site. We'd request the applicant consider an interconnection to the retail center to the south. Amongst the staff, we've talked about possibly a gated roadway into that so that the folks living in here would not have to go out onto the public ways to get into the retail center. We're not suggesting making this a throughway for everybody to use, but for the folks within that residential community. They're also showing recreation areas being met with several lawns and walking trails. We would recommend that paths be at least 6 feet wide and constructed with a permanent material design for the proposed users, if they're going to be wheelchairs using it or whatever kinds of surface may be necessary for users. We'd expect that at the time of the site plan. This does show a connection out to Smith Street and ultimately to Evergreen Walk. Again, these are connections that are supported through your plan of conservation development. That's a retail area, a walkable area, and it does show up as an area that we're targeting to create more walkability. And as mentioned, there's a 25-foot buffer required along boundaries adjacent to residentially zoned properties. In the regulation, it talks about keeping any berms that are possible out there. So again, we would be looking for any berms in those areas to be incorporated. The buffer plantings must be designed by a landscape architect. They must obscure views between residential and non-residential zones within 5 years and substantially block the view at maturity. That's per your buffer requirements. There are some regulated wetlands on the site. Wetlands approval is not required at the general plan stage, but would be required for any site plan. Prior to any actual building or site construction, a full site plan of development conformance with the general plan must be submitted and approved by the Commission, the Wetlands Agency, as well as the WPCA. The site plan will include all engineering details as well as final building design and site layout. As required, the Town of Manchester as well as the Capital Region Council of Governments have been notified of this application is pending. We did receive a response from CROG on December 4th stating the staff of the Regional Planning Commission have reviewed this zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or concerns of neighboring towns. If this zone change is approved, the Commission must state on the record that you found the zone change to be consistent with the plan of conservation development or a comment on that. If this general plan is approved, the Planning Department requests the following approval items be addressed specifically at site plan stage. Consideration of an interconnection between the proposed residential development and the retail plaza so that residents can get to the plaza. Details of the walking path into Evergreen Walk area. Phasing the construction clearly identified on the plans. Documents related to the affordability plan and common interest community be submitted. Documentation of density calculation and buffer and setback requirements of the Vulcan Gateway Overlay Zone be shown clearly on the general plan. Planning comments.
Take a breath, Michelle. Do we have engineering comments?
Hi, good evening. Just a few comments here. This is from Tony Manfrey, our Superintendent of Pollution Control. Public water is available in Smith Street and public sewers are available in Pleasant Valley Road and Wheeler Road, and the proposed sewers would connect to the existing system in Clark Street. Tony Manfrey states, I believe that the existing sewer pipe the developers want to connect to is large enough to accommodate the expected flows, but this is something that need to confirm to prevent peak flow surcharges. This will be required at the site plan stage. For the engineer comments, pre and post stormwater computations for stormwater basins will have to meet the DOT Stormwater Quality Manual regulations. Any site utility coordination meetings, the town would like to be included in those meetings as well. Emergency vehicle turning movements throughout the site. Engineering department would like to see that the fire trucks and emergency vehicles can make those movements that are provided in the concept plan provided tonight. And a question, do you have a comparison of the dedicated commercial zone traffic study versus what the proposed overlay zone provides, the comparison of the impacts, what is currently out there today as our zone compared to what is being proposed tonight? If you don't mind, thank you.
Good evening again. Again, for the record, named Chris McLean from Langen. So I think the question was related to the current zoning as compared to the proposed zoning. So in our traffic study, While we don't provide full detailed calculations on the pre and post of the zone change, we do provide a calculation on what current zoning would allow as far as designated commercial. We did have to do some kind of back of the napkin calculations in terms of what the gross leasable floor area would be for that. But we would estimate a site of this size would be about 500,000 square feet of shopping center, which would generate 1,798 cars in just the afternoon peak hour, as compared to the 210 senior living, which would generate just 79, which would be about 1,700 trips less in just the afternoon peak hour. So a considerable reduction over what's the developable traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's engineering. That's all the comments we had.
All right, thank you. So if members of the public would like to speak regarding this application, first we're going to ask people who want to speak in favor of it to come up. Josh, can you help me with the time? I would like to put a 5-minute time limit on your comments. If you're not finished, you may have an opportunity to speak after everyone else has had that chance to speak. We'll need to turn the microphone on. Again, please speak clearly. And does anyone want to come up and speak in favor of the application?
My name is Karen Johnson. I live at 236 Smith Street for over 43 years. While we have been blessed to enjoy that land across the street as vacant with all of the, pardon me, animals, et cetera, we realized that it was also on borrowed time. I was part of the subcommittee that was put together to determine the feasibility of this parcel of land and also to protect the interests of the Smith Street residents. I spent quite a bit of time talking to my neighbors and getting their input, and everybody had basically the same feeling that while we were blessed to have this open land for so long, we realized that, you know, the time had possibly come to an end. So we all obviously would like it to stay open and available to the animals. However, we feel that this age-restricted development is the most appropriate presentation moving forward because it will not impact Smith Street, which obviously we're very concerned about because it's a very busy street for walkers, runners, and all bikers, et cetera. And it would also not impact the police, fire, and the school system, which was presented ahead of me. So in closing, yes, we are hesitantly approving or support of it. Thank you.
If you could sign in on the,
Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak against or neutral regarding the application? Against. One more for. Please, come on up.
Hi, Joe Kennedy, 81 Allison Drive. I am for the zone change. I think the 210 units of senior housing will help grow our tax base. Will also provide many customers for our smaller businesses, which we need. I know so Don thought that 25% of the people come from town. I disagree with that. I think most will be from out of state because of our standard of living and quality of life, and we're fourth in healthcare. And our town provides a lot. I mean, not only good schools, but We've preserved over 1,000 acres of land. That's open space, parks, walking trails, community gardens, and protected agriculture. And we got some more that's coming down the line. So people are coming here for the quality of life. And Connecticut, I can't say is a good, and this town is a good state, but we need to grow our tax base. And I hope you guys will vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for, before I jump the gun again? All right, sir, if you want to speak against, please come on up.
Good evening. Again, good evening. My name is Scott Antosik. I live at 216 Smith Street in South Windsor. I've been a resident of South Windsor for over 60 years, and I've been an owner and lived on Smith Street for over 30, or thereabouts. South Windsor is a beautiful town. It's fantastic. It's why I've been here my whole life. I couldn't want to leave, would never. I raised my family here. They went to high school here. I went to high school here, all the school system. Unfortunately, I think that little corner of South Windsor is forgotten about. People just, they don't even want to go over there because of the traffic, honestly. Unless you live there, you don't have any idea how bad it really is. People can't get in and out of the Parkade in Manchester, and that one little plaza. All that traffic filters on down our way already, and it's a nightmare. Any more traffic in that area is just going to be terrible. But if there is, in fact, going to be traffic, why don't you just make it off of Pleasant Valley Road, entrance in and out of that? We have so many condo developments that have one entrance. They don't have 2 or 3, they have 1. And I can name a whole bunch of them, and there's a myriad of them in town. Aside from that, there's also a lot of land preservation in town. There's tracts of land spread throughout the town to preserve our way of life. This is what it's all about, preservation. So I would ask that you take that into consideration in preserving our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is very important to us, so critical to us. That's why we're here tonight. So I'll read my little thing that I wrote. So South Windsor is steeped with an influence of rural, lifestyle, agricultural community, which is truly an essence of South Windsor's charm and attraction. That is why it is so important to proceed into the future development of South Windsor with not only aspirations of a better future, but also with respect and preservation for what South Windsor has already maintained as a necessity to protecting quality of life, property values, and provide a safe and secure South Windsor for residents. In the early 2000s, when Evergreen Walk was created, we were here at zoning meetings trying to preserve the exact same thing we're trying to preserve now. At those meetings, final determination was to leave Smith Street alone with no access to any development from Smith Street. Thank you to our previous zoning board for protecting our values. I am respectfully asking that the zoning board of today please deny any zone change from rural residential and any zone change of property located on Smith Street that would open the door for construction vehicle and other additional vehicle access to Smith Street. We are respectful of the developer for wanting to provide additional senior housing for the residents with the aspirations of others, but not at the expense of residents of South Windsor by a loss of better quality of life and potentially significant property value loss. That end of town, again, I have to reiterate, is a forgotten end of town. Please do not change the zoning on Smith Street properties to accommodate the developer. For the only reason is for either capital profit at our expense, and we do not need it. And I also think that a walking path onto Smith Street is a ruse. I know that they want to get traffic flow from one development to the other to Evergreen Walk at some point in the near future, but please, make it in the future and not at our expense, and do not allow the zone change from rural residential. Keep our rural residential community the way it was. I grew tobacco in those fields right there where they're talking about doing all of this. I've seen our whole town develop through these years. And that's what keeps people coming here, is because of the beauty that what we offer. And if you start changing that, we have so much development already. And I don't even understand why there's any commercial aspect on this development whatsoever. If you want to make it right, make it residential entirely. And don't mess with Smith Street or Wheeler Road. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak against the application?
Good evening. My name is Brandon Pulfer. I live at 319 Smith Street, next to my parents at 307. I'm part of the 25 to 35 group that no one thinks about. A lot of my generation, we cannot afford housing, can't get a single family home, and this just illustrates it once more. I know they were talking about $90,000 a year. I don't make $90,000 a year, I'm 25. Many of my people of my age, we have college debts that we have to deal with and everything else. That's from 18 to 24, roughly, if you're getting like your bachelor's, associates, whatnot, and then your master's. We don't look till almost 35 or plus at this point till we can finally afford a single family home and a little bit of land. This development is 220 at $750,000. When am I ever going to save up enough money to even buy that? I know they talk about 15% affordable housing, but they can change that in the future, from senior housing to families and everything else. Also, with this current plan, it shows that there's tennis courts, pools, all these amenities. Over 65, who's going to be using that? In reality, this is planning for the future to change. I know also the traffic study was done, and I noticed it was done before holiday season. Holiday season around Smith Street and the Buckland Hills area is an absolute mess. We get twice the amount of traffic because of people shopping, doing all their shopping, the plaza behind our houses, plaza Buckland Hills, down all the way down Oakland and everything else, and the traffic doubles during that time of year. Sorry, I'm going a little bit all over the place, just trying to take notes and going from there. I know they also talk about extra spending. In reality, all the tax money that is going to be going, or people that are going to be living in these houses, it's going to be going to Manchester. It's not going to South Windsor. You have Buckland Hills Mall, the plaza right behind them, or in that area, and all those shopping centers and everything else, maybe just Evergreen Walk, and that's it. A lot of this money that they're going to be spending is going towards Manchester, not South Windsor. Let's see. What else do I got here? That'd be about it. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I'm Robert Pulford. I live at 307 Smith Street. I forgot to put my name. I don't want Smith Street being messed with, even Wheeler. I don't know how they're going to run all that piping, all that stuff. They're going to have to cut through the berm to make the road, to come out onto Wheeler Road, and you're saying not going to mess with the berms. They're going to have to go through those berms to get all those hookups. And I don't even think the sewers are even going to be able to handle all that from what we have. You got the condos and everything else and the apartments. Not going to happen. It's just going to be overwhelmed. They would have to put a pump house somewhere to move that stuff. As far as the water coming down our street, where are they going to hook it up? They're going to have to go through where that house burned down and go through and hook up through that. So that's access to our street. And they're talking about putting a walkway going over to the plaza behind us, elderly people are not gonna walk that distance to go there. They're gonna drive. Even, I'm 62. Well, I can walk right down there, go over the berm, and go to L.A. Bean if I want to. I won't do it. I would drive there. I don't go walking. So, but as far as Wheeler and Smith, I don't want those two streets messed with. It's just not right, because the traffic, I drive that way when I go to work. I go Wheeler Road, and then go into Pleasant Valley, and then when I come home, I'm dealing with the trucking company, with all the trucks coming in there, trying to get into the facility over there. You got Amazon, you got two other trucking companies. Those trucks back up on Pleasant Valley Road, and I have to try getting around then to keep going to Wheeler Road to get onto my street. It's just overwhelmed, the traffic in there. And Christmas time, oh my God. I go, what I've been doing, I take a right when I get off 84 and go towards Manchester there, and then go and cut through JCPenney's, the old JCPenney parking lot where all the trucking company is to get home, because the traffic is all backed up. So, but I don't want the streets messed with. I'm just have the access onto Pleasant Valley and leave it at that. And as far as that's, I don't know, you guys have to figure out the sewer and all the water and all that stuff, but I don't think they should access Wheeler Road for all that hookups. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? Can you come up to the front, please? I'm going to need you to sign in, and by the way,
You got it.
has everyone who's spoken signed in? Good.
Okay. My first name is Milda, last name is Riggs. I live on Arthur Drive, and I have a couple of questions regarding some of these statistics that I heard. I guess the first one is about the residents of South Windsor being the majority of the people that will purchase there. And I find it hard to believe that people that are living in South Windsor want to downsize and buy a $700,000 condo house in this neighborhood. Never mind one or two or three, but 210 of them, it's unrealistic. Second thing, in regards to that whole house thing, 15% are going to be affordable, which sounds, you know, that's the requirement. That's wonderful. I agree with that. They're saying that the residents of South Windsor will be the majority. Well, because it's senior housing, it's not going to hit the school system. But the people that sell their houses in South Windsor are going to sell to families that have kids, and those kids are going to be in our school system. And don't think it's not going to happen. You think that 25 families are going to sell and not sell to anybody with kids. Of course that's why they want to be in South Windsor. That's why my parents raised me here. My mother was raised here. I raised my kids here. That's where they want to be, with their children, with their family. So that sentence that they said doesn't even make sense to me. Will the police and fire be affected? Absolutely they will be. Family member, my ex-husband, was on the police department. And yeah, older people have more need for the police and fire and ambulance services. Are they going to be able to accommodate it? They mentioned, oh, it's only going to be maybe $179,000 a year additional, if that number is correct in my mind. That's baloney. That's baloney, because even if you have to hire one police officer or two police officers, boom, there that goes. That's just unrealistic numbers. And the other thing is the traffic. Like I said, I live Pleasant Hills condos. The traffic is ridiculous now, ridiculous. Even when it's not Christmas time, trying to get out on Pleasant Valley Road, you're like this. It's crazy to try to get out without getting T-boned, because people are going like 55 miles an hour in a 30. I guess the last thing was, the second, fees and permits, licenses. They're saying that the town will make $1 million because we're gonna be selling all these fees and permits and licenses. Well, it's not like we're not gonna have to hire anybody to pass all those things out or pay people that work here in the town to approve the fees, approve the permits, take the money. I come and buy my dog license and the lady behind the counter doesn't do it for free, I'm sure. So we need to staff those spots to fill all those positions. And the last thing that really didn't make sense to me, and I'd like an answer for that, if they're gonna build 210 units and they're only talking about an extra 79 cars, how are the other people gonna get around? They're not gonna have a car, they're gonna buy a $700,000 house with probably a 2-car garage and not have a car? That's crazy talk. So that's it. That's my opinion. Please, don't do this. Please
Thank you.
don't do this.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Mitch Belinda. I live at 16-2 Arthur Drive, South Windsor, in a condo complex right on Wheeler Drive. I've been there for 38 years, and traffic's bad enough. I can't envision adding 210, at least 210 more cars and not having an adverse effect on traffic. Traffic's bad enough. Pleasant Valley Road, they travel very fast. I just don't envision it getting better. The streets aren't that wide. Wheeler Drive is not wide. It's a small street. Smith Street's small. I can't see it. I just can't see it. I oppose it. I just hope you guys don't change the zoning as well. So that's it.
Who else?
My name is Madhu Reddy. I live at 198 Smith Street, and I've been there last 3-4 years. Before that, I was living in Pleasant Hills nearby, almost 10 years around that area. One thing I'm really concerned about 210 units coming there is traffic. Pleasant Valley Street has the highest ratio of condominiums. If you look around Ivy Lane, Amato Drive, Pleasant Hills, there are so many complexes with the high traffic, and this adds up. So, I mean, just can't, I agree with the rest of my colleagues who mentioned that there's a traffic problem. And second thing that I want to say is, you have so many communities coming up. Isn't it Foster Street, there is another 55 plus coming up. I hear 100 Oakland Street, there's another subject to approval. That's, I heard it's going on. And how many do you need 55 plus in South Windsor? That I'm concerned about the price too, if affordable or not for 55 plus. That plus, I like to see this area to be left alone for wildlife and deers. I see so many every day, and hopefully, you know, it's good for our animal kingdom. So hopefully, you will reject these 2 applications for zone change. Thank you so much.
Come on up.
Good evening. I actually did not come here this evening to speak to this topic, but I live in the area. And a couple of things I heard from these young gentlemen right here kind of scared me when they were talking about the traffic study specifically.
Did you identify yourself, sir? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin Clark, and I live on Deming Street. My apologies. I live on Deming Street, 47. I was actually here in November and December to talk about something else, and I got something else to address the committee with tonight. But when I heard about the traffic study that was conducted, no, I don't believe it for one bit. Ever since Costco went in over there, there is so much traffic now on Deming Street. Yesterday, it took me 5 minutes to get out of my driveway, and I'm not exaggerating. I counted 18 cars coming up from Ellington Road and Clark Street to cut through Deming Street to go over to Tamarack Avenue to get to Costco. Why? Because the traffic on Buckland Road is unbelievably horrible. We're putting gateway shopping centers in there over now, and putting entrances on Wheeler Road, Smith Street, Clark Street, Pleasant Valley, so people can find a way around. Trust me, people do find a way around these communities because they don't want to be up on Buckland Road with all that traffic. So my concern is the more developments we put in these areas, the more traffic it's going to generate because people will look for ways to get around that traffic. On a Saturday, if I take a right out of my driveway and go up to Buckland Road and turn right to head towards Lowe's or Home Depot or any of the shopping up there, it takes me almost 10 minutes to get to Pleasant Valley because of the amount of traffic. And I guarantee you there's going to be more traffic lights put in because of this new gateway project and everything else. So I just wanted to jump up and speak. I don't believe for 1 minute the traffic study says there's not going to be a lot of traffic in the area, because those of us that are residents around that area, which is being extremely overdeveloped, are feeling it every single day. And when we moved into these communities, the traffic wasn't like that at that point. So we're at a disadvantage. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Good evening. Shirley Brewer. I live at Fonsine Lane in Pleasant Hills Condominiums off of Pleasant Valley Road.
Can you get closer to the mic for me, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, I've never had that problem before. I used to speak publicly. Shirley Brewer. I live on Fonsine Lane, Pleasant Hills Condominiums. I've been there 40 years, so I'm one of the old timers there also. I grew up in Newington, which didn't have the Berlin Turnpike when I grew up there, and I moved to South Windsor 40 years ago. Really loved how rural it was, and have not enjoyed how commercially developed Buckland is. I have a friend who lives in Evergreen Crossing, and it literally takes me 12 minutes to get to her house, turning left on Pleasant Valley, Buckland. It's just unbelievable. I can walk there faster because I can walk down Smith Street and over the berm. I can't even imagine with all the development that's coming up on Buckland right now. And yes, sir, I apologize, but I'm one of those people who does go over Deming sometimes now because I just can't handle going around the other way, and I always avoid that area during Christmas season. And yeah, I just can't imagine what it's gonna be like. I've seen more deer on Pleasant Valley Road in the last 2 years than I'd ever seen in the previous 38 years, because they're being pushed out since Costco came in. And I just can't imagine 210 more buildings. And I also can't imagine, having worked 40 years and just retired myself, this many people being able to afford $730,000, $725,000. I know the other ones are going up for that much too. That's just unbelievable to me. So with a $500 fee, I think I heard them say, that's a lot of money. So yes, I would say please don't approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? We have two letters. Mr. Reddy, 198 Smith, you submitted a letter, correct? Okay, I'm going to make this your decision. It's lengthy. If you would like to read this into the record, you can. Otherwise, we can just enter it into the record. Yeah, that's fine. Is that okay? Thank you. And then, do you have the other one? Go ahead. It's this one.
Paper.
Yes.
From Walter Kebalo. All right, so we got a letter from Walter Caballo? Caballo. Right. In favor of the application 25-49P Down East LLC, with some concerns noted below to South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commissioners and its members, from Walter Caballo, Lucina Caballo, and Helen Caballo. Date, January 13, 2026. Dear Commissioners, we are residents of South Windsor and have lived on the corner of Smith Street and Wheeler Road for 65 years. We live directly across the street from the proposed development. We are in favor of the application and especially the Smith Street system of sidewalks and trails that are being proposed. We're also in favor of the development of senior housing, but only if the following concerns are addressed. 1, the dangerous intersection of Smith and Wheeler, which is a 4-way intersection with stop signs on Wheeler Road only. Going north on Wheeler and east on Smith are dead-end streets, so the prevailing traffic patterns is to travel from Wheeler to Smith. I witness daily drivers ignoring the stop sign or performing roll-bys in the path of oncoming traffic. Driving my vehicle, I have personally witnessed near misses, especially when I turn down my street. These roads are often used as a bypass for holiday mall traffic, and this proposal will create more trips on this dangerous intersection. I have attached a sketch of a possible solution. 2, in the engineering plans of stormwater overflow to the existing stormwater system on Smith Street, this connection point is not capable of handling the additional stormwater and will percolate out of the catch basin, allowing it to flow to Wheeler Estates. This connection should be made further downstream on Smith Street. And 3, the Wheeler Road and Pleasant Valley Road intersection is problematic, with long morning wait times. The added traffic of this proposal and the holiday mall bypass traffic will create more problems in the future. Respectfully submitted, Walter Caballo, Lucina Caballo, KF Properties, LLC.
Thank you. Do we know if we have any other letters? Josh, Michelle?
No, we only received 2.
Now we're going to turn to commissioners for questions. We'll start with Commissioner Welch.
I was wondering if I could gain just a little clarification on the history of this project. It was said that this was started off as a commercial zone change back in the 90s.
Back in 1990, there was actual commercial development that was proposed on it. It has been zone design commercial since the 80s, which is a commercial designation. The design commercial zone requires a 30-acre minimum footprint at the time of development. In 1990, there was a litigated settlement for development plans that never went forward. I think it was about 96 when the mall that you see today was built at the town line. The only approval at that time was a wetlands approval on the design commercial land. So it's sat as design commercially zoned land for the almost 40 years that I've been here. So it's always had the opportunity to come as commercial development.
All right. And also the 700,000 valuation, how is that broken down?
For the record, Don Poland, I'm sorry, could you say the last part of that again?
Oh, I was wondering about the valuation of the homes.
What about it, I guess?
Just like breakdown. Sure.
So, I'm not sure specifically what you're asking in the context of a breakdown, but the market analysis shows that kind of the current new product, age-restricted product, is running in the 700,000s. I think I need to be clear in a couple things here, or just provide some context. I know those prices sound really high, and they sound high to me. One is there's this idea of the downsizing senior, and the downsizing becomes a relative statement. I have a friend who, him and his wife downsized from 5,500 square feet into 3,200 square feet. They complain about 3,200 square feet not being big enough. And I constantly joke with them about that. But the point being here is you're talking, I mean, on average, it doesn't mean every unit. Some may be larger, some may be smaller, but on average, we're assuming about 2,500 square feet per unit. These are large units. They're not little tiny bungalows. So when you do that on a per square foot basis, you end up at a very high market price. So it's a factor of many things that play into that. The other point being is the average age of a home buyer today, the average age of a first-time home buyer today is 40 years old. The average age of a home buyer is 59. And my point in that is we're talking about 55 and over age-restricted housing in this development. A 59-year-old home buyer is different than a first-time home buyer. And the potential buyers coming to a development like this are coming to them in a very different financial place. That is a long career, that is most likely strong credit scores, that is most likely savings, and that is most likely equity from the sale of an existing property. So this age-restricted market as a new product in some ways functions at a higher value than I think our instincts tell us. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And those are my comments and questions.
Commissioner Abramson.
Yeah, I'd just like to know a little more about the carriage houses. There's 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and how do they differ from each other?
Yeah, in some ways that's still, for the record, Don Paul and Gilman York. In some ways that's still yet to be determined. So the regulation allows for 1, 2, or 3 bedroom units. We are conceptualizing that there will be a mix of bedroom units here. But this is kind of the brilliance of a development plan, or what I call a master plan. If approved, you're establishing kind of the criterion and the format of this development. What finally gets approved needs to be in the spirit of that, needs to meet the regulation requirements. But whoever the applicant for the site plan is gonna come forward with their actual, X number of units will be singles, X numbers of units will be 2s, X number of units will be 3 bedrooms. At this point, I just don't know what that breakdown will be. I could say, part of me, there might be some 1 bedrooms, there'd probably be very few. I think most of the units in this type of development would be 2 bedrooms, and there would be a percentage that would be 3 in those that are being the largest square footage. Hope that helps.
Yeah, but in relation to the automobiles, can you imagine a 3 bedroom unit without cars?
Not imagining a 3 bedroom unit without cars. If I go back to, bear with me for a moment here as I find my proper page. So we are estimating, this is page 14 on my presentation slides, 210 carriage houses, and we're estimating 1.75 vehicles per unit for a total of 368 vehicles in the site. So that 1.75 is a pretty common number in the context of multifamily development these days. If it wasn't age restricted, I would actually probably be estimating 1.5 if it was something like Tempo Apartments, because the mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms would drive it down lower. But you have to remember, once again, 55 and older, you will have single person households. either from the get-go or persons that, or households that will become single-person households. Is it possible that some units or whatever may have 3 vehicles because a person has a weekend driver or whatever? Meaning a car that they use on weekends like a convertible? Yeah, that's possible too. But in general, I feel very confident in the 1.75 vehicles per unit.
Okay, but I may be misremembering the number, but you had 79 cars going out in the late afternoon?
That was the traffic engineers with the peak traffic counts, which I believe was the PM traffic count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, Chris McLean from Langen for the record. Yes, our traffic study showed 68 trips in the morning peak hour and 79 trips in the afternoon. So what we do as traffic engineers is we like to look at the existing traffic that's on roads today, and then add the traffic that's forecast from our site onto it and see how the road changes from a level of service perspective. And if you look at most roads, traffic ebbs and flows throughout the day. So typically when you have, your office workers or your warehouse workers, they all leave, right? They leave their houses in the morning, they travel to work, and then there's a little bit, and so there's a peak there, and then there's a bit of a lull during the day where there are people out and about, but it's not necessarily that peak traffic that's happening in the morning. And then in the afternoon, the reverse happens. Everybody's done with their work for the day. They leave to go home, they leave to go out to go to restaurants. So you have this other peak of traffic in the afternoon. And so as a traffic engineer, what we're doing is we're looking at these 2 peak times because they operate differently, right? We're looking at these peak times though to see what the sensitivity is of these roads to new traffic. And so when we're looking at a site like this with senior housing, the information provided in the manual with regard to this peak traffic is it's going to be a little bit lower than what you would have with, say, a normal non-age restricted housing, because with this older 55 and up, they're less likely to have these, standardized jobs where they have to wake up, go to work for 8 o'clock and then come home at 5. So the peak traffic, when the roads are most sensitive to additional traffic from a new development, you have the residents there are less likely to they have a little bit of flexibility. They are less likely to, have to leave the house at a structured time.
Excuse me, I understand.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how do you get from 379 cars to 79?
Right, so those 300 cars are not necessarily all leaving the site between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning and returning from 4 to 5.
I'm talking about late afternoon. You only have 68 in the morning, but 79 in the late afternoon.
So those 68 cars leaving in the morning that we're forecasting are residents that are deciding to leave between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. So there may be people that live here that opt not to go out for the day because they simply don't have a job to go to, and they decide to go to the clubhouse with their other friends that live in the neighborhood. So while they might have 300 cars that are parked in the site, those aren't necessarily ins and outs that would reflect in the road.
I understand, but I'm still asking you. You went from 379 cars to 79 in the late afternoon. So how did you get there? That's about 20%.
Yeah. So it's a factor. So when you in this manual that I'm referring to, the ITE manual, they estimate about a third of the residents are coming in are leaving in the afternoon. So 0.3 cars per unit leave. And so that factor is built into the manual that we refer to,
Okay.
right? And so using that, that's how we got to the 70.
Okay, so that sounds like about 125 to me. A third.
210 units divided by 3 is
No,
70.
you have 379 cars, you said.
Right, but there might be more cars parked there are more parking spaces available than units. So
So there aren't 379 cars?
there might be 379 cars, but this factor that I'm referring to is versus units only, not necessarily parked cars. And that's kind of a function, that's the limitation of the available information that we had, is that it's a number that's referenced based on the number of units themselves, not necessarily
Okay.
the available.
I give up.
We'll try again. Commissioner Foley.
A couple things. Hey, Don, the secondary exit, or not secondary, we'll call it another access way to the plaza, adjacent, well, let's put it this way. I know that this is not the finished design, but with the owners, would they be willing to do another access, a keyed or keypad exit and entrance at the going into the plaza?
So, speaking of traffic, I think what you're asking is the right plan. Yeah, we can use this. I think what you're asking is whether this, whether there could be some opening right here. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Can you see the mouse right here? Like,
Strictly for the residents of that development.
Just for, so it would have to be a keypad, yeah.
See where I highlighted right there?
Yeah.
So we can look at it, but what in some of the early traffic counts that we did when we studied the existing traffic conditions, this intersection, this roadway, again, it's a little hard to, it's a little hard to
see.
Oh, whoa.
Can you blow it up?
Here comes Josh.
Full screen, I don't know if you'll be able to.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
You might need to scroll to.
Yeah. So what I think you're looking for is to inquire about this intersection right here. This roadway right here. And the issue with this roadway here is that it is the only egress on basically the entire west side of the shopping center. You know, I think you're probably aware, you guys go here, whoa, that the, sorry.
Technology.
Especially on the fly, right? When you're, there is this, there's the intersection toward the right by the Starbucks and the restaurants where you can exit. But other than that, all traffic, and again, when you're talking about the, these big boxes and the restaurants on this side, all of that must flow to this intersection here.
But that would just give the residents of this area access into the plaza without going out into the main roadways. So if it's a keypad or key card or whatever it may be, to get access into the plaza.
Just to get access in, so what
Just to
they're not-
relieve pressure on the main roads, if all they're doing is going Trader Joe's
Trader
to grab
Joe's, yeah.
groceries or whatever, it would relieve pressure off of
Yeah,
the other.
and it's certainly something we can look at, especially because by this logic, the people that are using this are residents. They're coming in and then they're going out, so they're not utilizing this intersection right here that is already
Correct.
congested. But yeah, we can certainly look into
Correct.
it. Yeah.
And then,
a pedestrian connection was certainly on the table because because everyone felt that was an easy
Right.
thing to accomplish. But for a car, yeah, I know what you're saying. Shopping, you have cars and loads.
And then, this is for Don, on one of the drawings I saw, one of the units, it showed 62 feet from the how are we gonna rectify that issue?
I'm sorry?
How are we gonna rectify that when it's supposed to be 75 and it's
Yeah,
62?
so we've already instructed the designer who's been working on these to start looking at that. As I said before, at the end of the day, we will respect the integrity of what's here. What I think's gonna happen is you're gonna have a unit from one location shift to another location and so forth. While we're trying to keep units away from the plaza, there is space along that southern portion backing the plaza where additional units, where removed units could go. In a talk with staff, it was with you, wasn't it? I'm not dreaming. Kind of the idea was floated of maybe the clubhouse and amenities in this location to resolve that issue. There's a 40-foot setback on the clubhouse rather than a 50-foot setback in the regulation. So we're exploring ideas. At the end of the day, the density would stay the same, the unit configurations would stay the same, but a unit here or a unit there may shift. And it's like, I believe this one is the one with the 62 on it. You know, maybe that unit has to come over to here or something. And our designers are working on that right now, and we will have revisions in before you.
At one time, Don, early discussions, I know I brought up about ownership, pride in ownership, rather than turn this into a rental situation, which never goes well. But we were also talking about individual units. Where did that ever go?
So we've gone through probably.
I mean, in my point is, it seems like we're trying to put 5 pounds into a 2-pound bag. There's 210 units jammed in here.
To play off of the further comment, if it is 5 pounds, it's a very valuable 5 pounds. But with that said, we've gone through probably about 8 different designs on this site, especially as we went through the committee process. And there was a point in time where there were some townhouses, not carriage houses. And the townhouses are narrower and they kind of flex space a bit more. In a national builder that was expressing some interest, and what the market was showing, we leaned towards the carriage houses. There was also a design that had single-family lots fronting along Smith Street. And actually, through the committee process, and I don't want to put words into Karen Johnson's mouth, Catherine, if she's still here, but I believe the Smith Street residents were more in favor of maintaining an undeveloped frontage there and not having units across it. So as we went through this kind of process, things came, they went, and this is essentially where we've settled.
The question of single, sort of, I think you were asking about single family homes, like individual.
Correct.
Those tend to not be preferred by the age-restricted community, by your 55 and older buyers. They don't want large homes with, yards and grasses and big yards. This is the preferred product. Smaller spaces, communal spaces, like in a condominium community. So the point is it's simply that when you're talking about an age-restricted community, they tend not to prefer a sort of larger single-family home on larger lots. It's part of that market demand.
That's all I have, Don.
Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about traffic. So the 2 entries to this project, it's in and out and in and out, right? I've seen projects in which they start with 2 entries. Both of them are into the zone and outside of the zone. But then, because of accidents happening, one becomes just an entry, and the other one becomes the entry and exit. Have you guys estimated something like that? What will happen?
So, Chris McLean, for the record. So we were considering both of these as full movement driveways, mostly just to allow for, because traffic is is congested around here already. We wanted to give everybody the flexibility, depending on kind of the ebbs and flows of traffic, to select which way makes the most sense at whatever time of the day was. We typically try to have at least 2 entrances and exits for most residential developments. We've heard from other boards in the past about, emergency services, God forbid an accident occurs at one entrance and, if something else happens, you want the ability for traffic to continue to flow in and out. So we feel comfortable with having the 2, one on Wheeler and one on Pleasant Valley.
Thank you. And a question about utilities. I heard that the WPCA said that they have the capacity to service this project. How do they show that? What kind of?
So we run a calculation, and it's based on the Connecticut Public Health Code. So they look at different types of housing units based on the amount of rooms, and then they estimate the amount of sewage generated per room. So conservatively, we assumed each unit would be 3 bedrooms, though we think it's going to be, in reality, a little bit less. So from that, you could generate a number. And speaking with the WPCA, all the sewage flows to one pump on Clark Street. So they did an analysis, I think they said it was in 2019, to understand the capacity left within that pump. So they compared that to the numbers we gave them, and they determined that there is kind of the remaining capacity in that pump. As part of the site plan application, we'll have to confirm all this with the WPCA, and as heard by the engineering department, it sounds like we'll have to do some flow monitoring and some additional confirmation during the process. But.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dexter.
Hello, friends. I've been here from the start, so it's good to see you all. I just want to talk about the market value of these units just a little teeny bit. You said 2,500 square foot average based on bedrooms and so forth. And are these all one level? Or are carriage up and down? Okay. That's what, yeah.
They would be multiple
levels.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we would envision on these attached 2 and 3, up to 6 unit pieces. Okay. I think you're a little high for our market, but I like the numbers, and I hope they come to fruition. Traffic, I don't want to beat that drum anymore, but I see a lot of Ds on this report, and I know we were talking 68 in the morning, 79 at night. I mean, is it the 80th car that puts us to an F? Or, I mean, how high on that scale are we to get to that D?
Yeah, so a D is, the numbers here are kind of for the overall intersection. Okay. And so there might be some individual movements that might be an F and some might be A's. So but we looked at them from an overall perspective because that really shows we envision traffic for this site coming from a few different directions, so we don't want to focus intricately on that. So, but I mentioned it before. We're looking at a pre-development versus post-development to really highlight what happens when this site comes online, and when we see the level of service not change, that leads us to believe that those 68 cars or 79 cars, depending on which time of the day we're looking at, isn't really going to change the way the intersection is operating versus what it is today.
And your numbers come from a database, I'm guessing?
So we went out and we collected traffic this year of the study intersections.
Little things on the road, or you go to a database?
No, so we actually send out cameras, 360 cameras, and that processes the data and gives us the numbers back for how many people turn left, go straight, take right, how many pedestrians, things like that. So we're using real data based on what we actually observed on the roads today, and then we are using a database to estimate the forecast of traffic for this particular site.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one more question. I know you guys have some work to do on density and, the setback buffer requirements. Do you think this is going to reduce your unit count? Or are you going to make it work?
Really don't know yet.
Yeah.
I know John doesn't want the unit count to change. But, but at the end of the day, yeah, is it possible? But I think it'd be minimal.
Okay.
And then I'd just like to say in that context of density, I mean, we will do what has to be done to get the density calculation to comply with the regulations. The one thing I want to make clear, and I think this also gets to what Commissioner Foley was getting at too. Let's say the final approval is 208 units for the density. I think it's still a question mark whether or not you'd get an application for 208 units. At the end of the day, every developer is going to kind of have their product, their sweet spot, what they like to do. And I think that then becomes a maximum build number. And it depends on the ultimate end applicant to come to you, so.
My final question, I promise.
No, that's fine.
It's got to do with, I think someone mentioned street size, and I'm specifically talking about Wheeler, and some of the pulling out and sight lines and looking to, to make a safe left or right there. And are these, we have, South Windsor is an old farming community. Some of the streets aren't even proper width to today's standards. So when does that, maybe Tori, that's a question for you, when do we look at that?
Yes, yeah, specifically with the street cut on Wheeler Road with the berms being cut through, we would want to see the sightline intersection, just basically a one plan sheet showing based on the design speed of the roadway, which I'm assuming is around 30 miles per hour, 35.
Yeah.
We'd like to see it meeting the 85th percentile requirement, which is the speeding of the road, which I would assume falls in the 40.
Okay, and that's a site plan discussion?
That's just a, yeah, it's not really a site, it could be a part of the site plan application for us as a comment as engineering, and it's for us to make sure they're meeting the DOT Highway Design Manual guidelines.
I think we should, yeah.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Kupchonis.
I'm end of the line here. No further questions.
Commissioner Terry.
I was going to say I'm past the end of the line, I guess. Just to beat traffic to death just a little bit more. The intersection at Wheeler to Pleasant Valley, is there thoughts of putting a traffic light or something there if the traffic
So
becomes a
our
flow?
analysis showed that we weren't having a significant impact on traffic at that intersection. So it would operate pretty similar to how it does today without a traffic light. Typically, and I don't want to put words in the town engineer's mouth, but typically you want to have for most intersections for traffic light, you would need to meet certain thresholds for volume, and I don't believe that that intersection would meet those thresholds.
I can add to that, and I do agree. With this type of development, it doesn't meet the warrant analysis that Division of Traffic at DOT would review and would come back and basically say this doesn't warrant a traffic signal based on the density and the population, the turning movements coming out at the peak hours of traffic flow. But if this was a designated commercial property that was showing the flows that I had asked earlier about, that might be a time where, that gets reviewed and might be warranted.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Another question while you're up. Yep. It talks about the road behind the Hampton Inn, which currently, I guess, takes some truck traffic and the like, being closed off. Since that's something that is being used mostly by the shopping center that's in Manchester, would they have a problem with us closing that road off?
I think
the part of Pleasant Valley that was just closed off recently was due to dumping that was going on the property. So we worked with Mr. Swaggerty in getting those closed off so that dumping would not keep occurring back there. So with this development plan, I think part of that driveway is being reopened, if I'm not mistaken, John, right?
So this is the road here, now that I figured out how to do this on the fly.
This was the road here behind the hotel where we were getting some dumping, and in particular where people were dropping
Tires. Yeah.
which is a real
And this
pain.
has gone on for a long time.
I
so-
knew that, but I didn't realize they'd closed it
But
off
they
now
just
completely.
put up some fences. They put up some fences to prevent folks from getting back here. Our property management group did that just to prevent people from getting back to that road and then performing that kind of dumping. So right now they've got some restrictive fences that are here, but we worked with Michelle in the town to make sure the fences were, what I call it, breakaway style, so they could be busted through if in case of emergency, things like that. The idea would be that, as the development moves forward, that road that I just covered up would be integrated into the development. So there would be fence between there would be more traditional fences separating the shopping center and the development to prevent that from happening in the future.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris, why don't you stay up? I'll start with you.
Sure.
Some of this might be a little repetitive, but when you say no change in level of service, what does that mean?
Sure. So level of service is roughly equivalent to the amount of time that you're sitting there waiting, right? And it's different for if you're at a stop sign versus a traffic light, the amount of time you would typically have to wait. And so the manual grades those on a scale of A to F, right? And so when we're analyzing like a traffic light, let's say it's a level of service C, that means you're waiting, maybe 60 seconds on average for the light to change so you can continue on your way. So if with the additional amount of traffic, that kind of clogs it up and you have to wait, say, 75 or 80 seconds, that would put you in a different bucket to like a level service D, for instance.
So the context for this is traffic moving in and out of this site.
Right, so when...
So we go from a vacant lot to 210 units. How could that not change the level of service?
So when we're estimating the amount of traffic for this particular site, we estimated 68 to 79 trips per hour. So over 60 minutes, right? That's that's a car every minute, or 1.5 cars every minute. So spread out over a whole hour, most of the roads around here can handle one more car per minute without really restricting the flow of traffic around.
Okay. Good enough. And this is something that Commissioner Foley asked. I'll ask it. I need a little more clarity. The ingress and egress for the site, walk me through that.
The ingress and the egress. So like the way that the traffic flows in and out.
In and out of the site.
Right. So we were planning on having two driveways, one across from what was the name of Crofts Drive. That's kind of the main entrance. We were thinking about 60% of traffic of the site comes in and out of that.
Okay.
And then we have another in and out on Wheeler Road. And so that is about 40% of the traffic. So with 70 cars-ish, you're looking at 30 to 35 cars every hour, which is, a car every 2 minutes or so. And so those are going to be stop signs, kind of approaching each of the roads.
Okay.
Anything else I can explain?
No. Don, I have one or two for you. So what I'm getting is that this issue of the density, you guys are getting back to us, and our regs say 4.5 units per buildable acre.
Yep.
Where are we now? Do you know?
So we initially just did 4.5 units per acre. We didn't do the buildable, and that was just an error on our part.
Okay.
My apologies. We then factored in the wetland, and once again, that was vagueness of instruction coming from me to the designer, and I missed Michelle reminded me of the detention basins are also included in that developable acre. Just for a bit of, kind of explanation or forgiveness on my part, is every town, that developable land calculation, every town is different on what they include and so forth. And I just haven't come across the detention basins being commonly included. The thing right now, so the wetlands were drawn in, we're now looking at the detention basins, and that's just, a little bit challenging in the sense of we're at a conceptual stage here, not full-blown stormwater calcs and so forth. Granted, they've taken a look at it, but it's not the final site plan of detail. So we just want to make sure we get those numbers right and get them included in, and then we'll recalc the density.
All right.
There's also, and related to that density is what Commissioner Foley mentioned, is those setbacks from those areas. And then we also have the 47 point something acres where we have a maximum of 47. So we have to tweak a property line to the remaining DC lot just slightly. So we're making some recalcs to get all that right, and we'll get them back to you.
All right, looking forward to that. A question on some math that we went through about the affordability issue.
Yep.
So you told us that the average income in South Windsor is $96,000.
In the region, not South Windsor.
In the region, okay. And the 80% to make it quote-unquote affordable gets us to 76.8 or thereabouts?
Correct.
And I believe what you told us is that selling a house as affordable would make it about $345,000?
Correct. I think it was 343.
I don't understand how someone making 76.8 is spending 345, but someone making 96 is spending double that.
Someone 96 isn't
What am I
spending.
missing?
Someone 96 isn't spending double that. So when you look at the home ownership market, so median household income in the region is approximately $96,000. When you look at, and I'm doing this as part of a study for CROG right now. If you take the median home value in the region, $364,000, the income to purchase it at, say, we're looking at a first-time home buyer, 10% down, 6.3% interest rate, that's what it was when we did the calculation, PMI being applied, so forth and so on. You basically come up with you need an income of $135,000, not that 95, that's the median income. So the average person buying into a market rate unit is going to have an income above that 95 median household income. In addition, that other thing I said in the question that was asked from Commissioner Welch over here is that, you're servicing a 55 and older population, probably mostly a 60 to 65 population as the initial buyers in here, and they're coming to this with equity. So on the market units, they're taking the sale of a house that probably has a paid off mortgage and full equity and sinking it into a down payment and driving it down. So they can get a lot more in value with, not as high of income. So, trying not to make this too long, when you then get to those affordable units, so you're not going from the 95 down to the 76. You're probably going from a 130 plus down to the 76 to keep that short.
Okay. If this project moves ahead, and this might be a Tom issue, when would buyers move in? When would COs be issued? Things like that. What do you see in the future?
No idea. No. I mean, theoretically.
The context for my question has to do with what's happening with our schools. Because we've seen projections, and at some point, what has been happening is going to plateau and reverse. And I'm just trying to square the circle on those two issues.
Right. Well, I'm not sure how much they're connected. So they are connected in some ways. One is The majority of your school enrollment increases since 2015 till now have been driven by turnover in your existing stock.
Right.
And as was discussed, a portion of these will result in turnover in your existing stock, even though I argue that turnover will happen anyways. From a timing perspective, I guess, you know, best case scenario, you guys approve the master plan and the zone change, and maybe an application comes in, you know, this time next year, and maybe site work follows in late 2027, and maybe construction in 28 and 29. You know, you're talking, let's just say it's 200 units, you know, and the absorption rate is probably, I don't know, 8 units a month or so. So construction, at least in the context of units, will go on for a period of time. So, I mean, you're talking full completion from now, we're in 26, probably in late 28 into 29.
Okay.
It's some,
I'm sorry?
okay, John thinks later, so.
All right.
So let's say 30.
Just looking to spitball it.
Yeah, it's a while.
I think that's it for me. Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Go
I
ahead.
just had a real, and it's really not on the subject, Michelle, but you know this 10-acre site that we have set aside? How would they get into the site? I mean, is there any thought on them using the main entrance of this development?
So I would think through your access management, you could look for encouragement coming off the access drives. I don't know, there really hasn't been any discussion about entrances off of Pleasant Valley or Wheeler at this point. I mean, that would be a site design issue.
So we discourage a third
If,
Yeah, I don't know if you've given any thought to it, Don.
yeah, I think back at the committee, we had a design that had a user on that site, a conceptual, and the access was provided to that site from this main access way. And once again, I think your access management regulations could include a requirement for that to be provided in the future, if I'm correct. So.
Commissioner Foley just shared that we've beaten this horse enough. So anything else from the applicant?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
What I would like to suggest to the commissioners, because we have been provided with a whole lot additional data tonight, that we leave the public hearing open. I know I, for one, would like to absorb some of this and come up with additional questions, and we'll cover it at a subsequent meeting if you all agree. You good with that?
I would suggest holding it open to the 27th, which is your next regularly scheduled meeting.
All right. So we're not closing the meeting, but we're closing this portion of the meeting, leaving the public hearing open.
Okay. You're welcome.
Right. Let's move into the regular meeting portion of our meeting. Yes, if we're keeping the public hearing open, you can come back. You're welcome to come back in 2 weeks and provide additional testimony.
Everybody take it outside.
Take it outside. We're still in session, please. So I'd like to call our regular meeting of the South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I think we have a full slate of commissioners. We don't need to seat anyone. and I believe we have only one order of business. Michelle?
Well, you have the minutes
You're right.
and public participation, and then one order of business.
I'm all screwed up. Forgive me. Did everyone receive the minutes? Are there any comments, changes, edits? Except by consensus? Done. Public participation. Is there anyone that would like to speak on something not on the agenda?
Kevin Clark. So I wanted to come out this evening and talk to you, Mr. Chair, and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As I said, my name is Kevin Clark. I live on the south side of Deming Street here in South Windsor. I was before you in November and December regarding the proposed text change at 76 Deming Street. And through that process, I learned a great deal about how the restricted commercial or RC zoning works and how it affects our neighborhood. So tonight, I want to focus specifically on the RC zoning on the north side of Deming Street and how it impacts the residential properties in our neighborhood. For some context, across the street from my home are 4 parcels on the north side that reside in the RC, 50, 60, 68, and 76 Deming Street. 3 of these parcels are residential today, and there is one which is located at 60, is a commercial contractor. While the zoning allows the residential to remain, it places very strict limits on residential use. Homeowners cannot increase the square footage of their homes, and if a house is torn down and rebuilt, it cannot be larger than the original structure. By contrast, a commercial buyer can remove the same house and construct a larger commercial building as long as they meet RC bulk and design standards. That means that the same lot has far greater development potential for commercial buyers than a residential family. And that creates a built-in disadvantage for homeowners. Chairman Bernstein, when we were here on November 25th discussing the earlier referenced text change for 76 Deming, you made a comment that really stayed with me. So I went back to the recording because I wanted to be sure I could quote it accurately. At 41 minutes and 26 seconds into the video, you said, and I quote, "It feels a little bit like the restricted commercial zone where there is residential in it should be looked at again. I'm not sure that putting businesses in areas where there is residential makes a ton of sense, end quote. I really do appreciate that observation because it captures exactly what homeowners in our part of Deming Street anyways are experiencing. So what I'm asking you tonight is to look at it again. And we have 2 requests for the commission. Our first request, remove our block from the RC. Our stretch of Deming Street is a quiet residential pocket with only one business. That contractor, they've been an excellent neighbor. They're quiet. They're not active on nights or weekends. And they were very thoughtful in designing the building to fit within the character of our neighborhood. Our long-term goal is to see this very small residential section removed from the RC zone and placed into a residential district that reflects how the area is actually used today. At the same time, we're not going to ask you to push out the existing business. We would absolutely support allowing it to continue as a lawful, ongoing use with the understanding that if it ever ceases operations or moves, that property would then revert to residential use. So we are asking you to direct staff to explore rezoning this very short stretch of Deming Street from RC to an appropriate residential district. And our second request, let's level the rules and the playing field for residential owners in the RC zones across town. Current RC regulations treat residential owners unfairly compared to commercial buyers. It is absolutely worth repeating that under the current rules, homeowners in RC are effectively frozen. They cannot reasonably expand or rebuild a single-family or multifamily unit to a larger home, even when dimensional limits might otherwise allow it. Yet, a commercial buyer of the same property can expand or rebuild with a larger commercial structure. So this imbalance gradually pushes these RC pockets towards commercial use, regardless of neighborhood character or the long-term planning goals. So whether or not rezoning moves forward, initiate or invite a zoning text amendment so that single or multi-family homeowners in the RC zoners can be expanded or replaced with a larger home on terms comparable to commercial buildings on the same size lots, obviously subject to RC design standards and protections for adjacent residential areas. These steps would align zoning with the character of our neighborhood, protect a good local business, and ensure that families in RC zones across town are treated fairly and equally. So I thank you very much for your time and your contributions to our town, and if I could just get some advice on what next steps are. Do I need to submit an application or whatever? But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We don't have any bonds, correct?
No bonds, no. The
Old
only other-
business. Now I think we're ready for the one.
Yeah, the one correspondence you have, yes.
One correspondence. Do you want to brief us on that?
Yeah, this is a request for
I
the
have it somewhere.
the Casarino re-subdivision that you approved. They're looking for a 90-day extension for the filing of Mylars. The request came in post your agenda being out, so we're handling a correspondence. It does come up later this month before your next meeting, so it's a standard request, and this is for the filing of your Mylar for the subdivision. I think you have a written request, Cesar, right there, yeah.
All agree to extend this? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Only thing left is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Say aye. Aye.